the world continues to fight the aftermath of the coronavirus pandemic, women, especially globally, are also continuously fighting sexual harassment. You know, the question is, what do you do when you're sexually harassed? What is the legal way to address such a situation or such an issue? Most of the times we only focus on men. Today I'll be including men, because men are also sexually harassed in either workplaces, in their homes, various places. My name is Abna Bruni and you're welcome to Youth Empowerment Television Show today on Pan-African Television. I have a she's an affair attorney, and she's going to help me today discuss sexual harassment and how to legally, spot them and then address them. You're also welcome to join the conversation on 020-986-9961. Maud, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Or should I say Juanita?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Everyone will be like, who's Maud?
Okay, so you prefer Juanita?
Yes, please.
How are you doing? You look good.
I'm amazing. I mean, I had to do the makeup myself, but I'm still amazing.
Of course.
Homemade, DIY.
Okay, so Maud, let's go straight into the conversation. People say sexual harassment. What do we even mean by sexual harassment? What and what put together to constitute sexual harassment?
I think the simple way to define it would be unwanted sexual advances, unwanted sexual touching. In fact, in the UK, things have now changed drastically, where in the train stations we have signages that will actually warn people and dissuade them from steering, because even steering at somebody can be deemed as sexual harassment. Now, that doesn't mean we all have to sit on the train looking at the ground, but it's the type of steer. What about when it comes into people who are behaving inappropriately, whether that is that you're in a confined space and then they use it as an excuse to touch you? It's an unwanted touching without consent. These are all things we have to consider. It's about us knowing what is inappropriate and about us having the ability to speak up about inappropriate behavior.
I see. Then if you come to Ghana, everybody has experienced sexual harassment, because, for example, if you are working in the space like Accra or Kantamanto or Kumasi Kejetia, we are all literally like this,
like sardines.
Exactly, we are all packed like that. So if somebody touches me like that in such a situation, I mean, can I pardon the person, or should I consider that sexual harassment?
I think it all comes down to intent, because if it is accidental, then that person has committed no crime. But we have to consider when a person puts himself in a situation where they know that they will be able to do that and get away with it. In fact, when I was in trains in India where they were all squashed literally like sardines on buses, I am convinced there were 2 occasions when I was touched sexually. I didn't imagine it, and I remember on one occasion I was on the train and I was touched, and another time I was on the bus and I was touched, and I even questioned whether I had understood correctly or whether I misunderstood facts, because it happened so fast. But that's exactly what it was. But what we have to appreciate with these unwanted touches and advances, very frequently they happen so quickly that we even question, did that really happen? Which makes me think about grooming, which is when you prepare somebody or prepare yourself. Grooming is preparation for work or for school or for sex. And so when something is gradual, you may not even realize that that person has invaded your person, your body. In fact, for me in Ghana, I'm very uncomfortable with how I've observed that a lot of men, not all, a lot of men are very touchy-feely in a non-sexual fashion, where they will hug you, where they'll hold on to you, but maybe you don't want to be hugged that way. And it may not be a sexual hug, but that's besides the point. In fact, I have a previous companion, we no longer communicate, right here in Ghana. When we were sitting together in the bus, I said to him that you're touching me, and he said to me, you're touching me, your leg is touching me. He thought it was a joke. I wasn't joking. When we were crossing the road, he was trying to grab my hand. Now for me, I don't mind people helping me cross the road, but I felt in my spirit that maybe there was some kind of attraction there, maybe he had an interest, because it bothered me. I have many male friends, if they grab my hand, I'm fine with it, but with him, I was bothered. And even when I said, don't touch me, he continued to do so. We need to have appropriate boundaries, but the boundaries must be respected, and I shouldn't have to disrespect you, shout at you, or be rude at you for you to not touch me when I said don't touch me. And even with the steering, I was on the bus very recently and I was wearing a dress that my mother bought, And I say my mother bought it because it was too short, even though my mother bought it. And I had on black tights, and I wore the black tights because the shirt is so short. I'm sitting on the bus, a guy decides to sit beside me. I think he had a wedding ring, I can't recall, but he kept staring at my legs. It was so obvious, it wasn't discreet. And yes, I had on thick black tights, but he kept staring at my legs. I was so uncomfortable that I said to myself, Juanita, be prepared to shout rape. Now, I have never shouted rape, but I told myself, be prepared to shout rape because of the way he was looking at me. If we were in the UK, that would be inappropriate steering, and I'd be able to inform the authorities. There's a number on the posters. We could even text or WhatsApp whilst we're on the train, and at the next stop, the police would get on because we will not tolerate it. It's a zero tolerance policy. A casual stare is not a crime, but when someone is staring at you, make you feel uncomfortable about an unwanted sexual advance, the police in the UK, specifically the British Transport Police, are putting a stop to that.
I see. So, talking about your example, you were wearing something tight, you were enticing the person. Are you in Ghana? People would say that you have brought it up upon yourself, because why wear something that would attract somebody to stare at you?
Well, first, it wasn't tight, right? I was shaped like an ironing board. I don't have a Ghanaian shape, guys. I'm shaped like an ironing board. So it wasn't tight at all. It was just short. But remember, I was wearing tights. In fact, my aunt told me that when she wears skirts that are rather short, she wears thick black tights. Because by wearing that, then you are disguising and covering yourself, and it's more modest. I didn't buy this dress. My mother bought the dress. The dress is too short, but it's a nice dress. I went out with a friend. I wanted to wear it. I have a crush on a guy. I wanted him to think I look hot. I don't think he did. But the guy beside me, his looking was not wanted. His looking was inappropriate. Even if the dress was tight, even if I had a voluptuous shape, it's not the point. That doesn't give you consent to make me feel uncomfortable, to make me feel that I should shout rape when there is no rape, because that's crying wolf. But what choice did I have? I'm sat in the corner. I'm afraid he's going to advance. I have no other option but to shout rape, even though that wouldn't have been rape. It may have been sexual assault or an unwanted touching, but not rape.
Now that you mentioned sexual assault, are we confusing sexual assault and sexual harassment?
Harassment would be a continuous thing. So, for example, let's say that a person is stalking you. That would be a form of harassment where it's a continuous pattern. One phone call doesn't constitute harassment. It's going to be multiple. Sexual assault can be one occasion, or it can be multiple. The two can be very much interlinked. In fact, with law, there are a lot of gray areas. It isn't even about, is it assault, is it harassment? It's a crime. It is wrong. It's an invasion of our bodies. That's all that matters. When we start with legalese, people get away with doing stuff because, well, it was just one touch. One touch is one touch too many. That's the way that I see it.
I see. So let me put it this way. When am I supposed to report something that I feel is sexual harassment?
Immediately. But the key is to report it to the right individual, which should be to the authorities. But we've got to use wisdom. It doesn't matter what country you're in, you must use wisdom as to who you inform. Because the fact of the matter, if you inform it to a police officer and that's not his department or division, regardless of country, he may take a note, but does it get progressed up the food chain to the correct department so it can be dealt with? I would always encourage people to report, because even if it's a minor issue for you, that individual may do it again to someone else. And so when you're reporting, it's not just about, oh, it was a one-off. What if that's not his first time? The police gather evidence. The more individuals that continue to do this over and over again, the police can then build a case against that person. So don't just say it was only me. In fact, I know of a woman in Ghana who was abused in her childhood. 60 plus years later, she wants to bring a case against him. I believe in Ghana there is no statute of limitation for rape, which means if you raped someone 20 years ago, you can still be prosecuted. This happened to her all those years ago. She stayed silent for many reasons, but quite often because of her silence, others may have been abused. That's not blaming her. I get the silence. I get it. But when we don't speak up about it happening to us, it will likely happen to others. But let's never blame the victim. Let's encourage them so they can speak up, so something can be done, so that perpetrator will not continue to abuse other young girls for the next 60 plus years.
I've seen that some people have started sending in messages. Let me read some of them and then I'll come back to you because I've seen a question in there. Hello, my name is Deborah. I'm very much interested in the topic. I've had a situation like that before at a recruitment center. Wow. Deborah, I'm so interested in your conversation. I want to hear what happened to you and how did you deal with it? Who did you report it to? What were their responses? You know, what procedure did you go through? Are you satisfied with how you were treated? You know, tell me about it. I thought there was a question there. This person says, good afternoon, you're doing a great job. My name is Frank Kwanzaa. I want to find out if a friend I admire kisses me in public without my knowledge. Is it sexual harassment? A friend.
The difficulty is a kiss is not sexual. A kiss can become sexual, and without going into too much detail, because I want to keep this clean, I'm a born-again Christian, where did they kiss you? Because a kiss on the cheek is not sexual, but was consent involved. A kiss in relation to your body parts is sexual. So where was the kiss? Because even though they say,
let me help you.
Yes,
When somebody says kiss, it means mouth.
I appreciate the clarity.
Kiss. If the person wants to say a kiss on the cheek, they will say peg. So if somebody says kiss, it means it was a mouth-to-mouth something.
That is good to know, but even though he said in public, having traveled to 41 countries, a kiss can actually be on other parts of the body in public, because that does happen. In fact, slight digression, I know of children in the United States that engage in sexual activity in the toilets for a Taco Bell, which is a type of food. So even though they may say you were kissing in the restroom, that is not what they meant. And in Ghana, things are changing. Modern technology, this individual might mean that kind of kiss, others may not. So the reality is, if consent is involved, that is okay. The absence of consent, is that sexual harassment? The big question is, in Ghana, does the law consider sex a kiss or kiss a sex? Because kissing is not sexual, which is why I made reference, depends where on your body. Because a kiss on the cheek would not be a sexual kiss. However, if the kiss on the face area, keeping this clean, but involves touching of other parts of the body, then we're going into sexual harassment if consent is absent.
Juanita, let me digress a little bit. You made mention of, sexual harassment not necessarily being, even citing somebody in a certain way that makes them uncomfortable is also a form of sexual harassment. What are other forms? Can I not touch you, but being close to you make you feel like you've been sexually harassed?
It depends on the person. Harassment, like I said, it's a repeated course of action. I believe that we have the ability to touch and engage with others physically, but we have to respect boundaries. In fact, I have female friends who are uncomfortable being hugged by anybody. Now, I've never asked them directly, but in the back of my mind, I wonder if there's been some kind of abuse in their life, because why are they uncomfortable being hugged by another female? I think the crucial thing is to be able to communicate your boundaries and for those boundaries to be respected. Not to be afraid, ashamed, embarrassed, or uncomfortable to say, I'd rather you don't touch me. In fact, I know of individuals, including in Ghana, godly males and females, who have boundaries and will say, I do not want you to touch me repeatedly. It will cause me to have sexual urges. It will arouse me. Those are individuals who set clear boundaries. But far too often we don't do that. And even so, like I mentioned, too often in our culture, I see men who will touch and hug up a woman without even considering if she likes her, let alone her husband or partner, whether he's there or not. Because for me as an outside observer, when I observe that, I feel that's a little bit too close. I don't like it, does she? That's the question I had. But unless someone speaks up, I don't know that. In fact, I was in a car with a pastor a few years ago, and he invited me to sleep over his house. His wife was overseas. I am not sleeping over the house of a married pastor. If his wife is there, sure, his wife had been abroad for a significant amount of time. And when I'm in the car, he said I was crying, and then he touched my face. I think I'd know if I was crying, and then he touched my knee. I was very, very uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. And in fact, truth be told, if that hadn't happened the way it did, I may have reacted out. But because it was so gradual, what I would consider grooming, I just froze. And that's what perpetrators often do. It's very subtle. It's a gradual touch, a gradual squeeze, something non-sexual. In fact, I know of a girl in Ghana who's been abused by the pastor, the deacon, the elder, by many males in the church and outside. And in one photo, one of the men she was with had his hand over her neck, sort of over her shoulder. But the position made me uncomfortable. Knowing how much she's been abused by men in her church, his hand should not have been there, in my opinion. And I expressed that to her. She thought it was innocent. I didn't. Now, maybe the guy was innocent, but other men would not be. So it's about understanding what is a person's intention. Even I was actually on one of the TV stations, GHTV1, I believe it's called. I took a photograph afterwards and I said, do I have consent to touch? And we laughed. I had consent to touch him. But the fact is, we shouldn't have to laugh about it. We should say it with sincerity and seriousness, because maybe he does not consent. And just because he's a man doesn't mean he wants to be touched by a female. So let's not assume it's a women thing, it's a people thing. And in Ghana, we have males, boys, young men who have been victimized sexually in their childhood and are uncomfortable by any kind of touching by males or females.
That sends me right to my next question. Can somebody be abused by the same sex? Can somebody be abused or sexually harassed by the same sex?
Most definitely. In fact, there's a documentary which is set in Ghana as well as Nigeria, I believe, called Sex for Grades. It's a brilliant documentary by Kiki, I believe her name is. In fact, I interviewed her and she spoke in detail about how we have individuals in a position of power sexually abusing, sexually assaulting and harassing their students for grades. Outside of school, it happens in the workplace. We have house help who will abuse sexually the children in their care. We have teachers and professors abusing. In fact, I know of instances of children, in fact, a girl who was 6 who was sexually abused by her 10-year-old sister. I know of a girl of 9. This girl was in school with her friend who's 10. The 10-year-old told me point blank the 9-year-old girl is sexually abusing her in class. Yes.
How?
Under the table. So you're sitting at the table together. The teacher has no idea what you're doing with your hands. There's something called digital penetration. These are your digits. Read between the lines. And I know of another case, country doesn't matter, of a teacher whose student came to school, was distressed because his mom is having a baby. And she said, but you should be excited about the new sibling. And he said he's not excited because he doesn't know if the baby is his or his brother's. That means women do it too. It is not just a man thing. We have women who sexually abuse and become impregnated by their sons. And that's the true story.
I see. When I was saying same sex, I mean, would a female feel sexually harassed by another female?
Yes, like with the 6-year-old. For example, the 6-year-old girl, her sister was sexually abusing her repeatedly. In fact, girls. That's right, 6-year-old girl, 10-year-old sister's abusing her. The child in school, the 10-year-old girl is being abused by the 9-year-old girl. In fact, I know of a young boy who opened up to me as an adult and said that his brother tried to rape him on multiple occasions. He was under the age of 5. What? In fact, the neighbor next door used to sit him on her lap and would say, this is my boyfriend. So publicly, she'd sit the little boy on her lap and say, this is my boyfriend, and kiss him on the lips. When the parents were away, this little boy would stay with a lady who would sexually abuse him from small. And when I asked him, because he's a close friend, when I asked him, why didn't you say anything? Which is an inappropriate question, but because we're friends, I can ask. He said, I thought she was my girlfriend. The fact is, in face-to-face, in front of other people, she kissed him on the lips and said, this is my boyfriend, and no one had an issue. I would have an issue with that, because what did she do behind closed doors? And he was young, probably attracted to her, so when she was engaging sexually, he thought it was okay. I know of another young boy, when he was 4, His aunt used to show him pornography so he could learn how to do things to her sexually. I know of a guy in Ghana, 2 of his female relatives sexually abusing him. So it's not just boys being abused by male pedophiles. We have women abusing boys, women abusing girls. It's a people issue. And I want to be clear, it's not a Catholic issue because it happens in every church, religion, and race. We know it happens in the Catholic Church. We know that. But it's happening everywhere. So we can't suspect every priest. Let's suspect every person. It's not about being paranoid. It's about having knowledge. The Bible says people perish for lack of knowledge. Knowledge is power. Be on high alert. Have your antenna out there, because if not, things will go on in front of your face and you are clueless. I was abused sexually as a child, and when I was 4, I told my mother in plain English, my stepfather was tickling me and his hand slipped. Now, when I was telling a friend this about a week ago, she said that his hand didn't slip. That was child language, and she's correct. A person's hands cannot slip to touch your private parts. It was intentional. My mother fell short because by her own admission, she told me, don't let it happen again. Told my stepfather, don't let it happen again. So when it happened again, I didn't tell her. That's where she went wrong. It happens too often. It is not a mother thing, meaning Juanita's mother. It's a mother thing. The child says, daddy did this, uncle did that, auntie did that, and the parent either beats them or says, you should know better. That didn't happen. You got it wrong. In fact, I know of a child who was sexually abused, a boy, sexually abused by a female. Let's say the boy was 5, the female was 10. The boy was beaten by his mother. He's the younger child. And so that's not okay. I don't agree with corporal punishment, that if a 5-year-old is having sex with a 10-year-old, beat the 10-year-old, not the 5-year-old.
You see, the situation is that in Ghana, if you are sexually harassed and you even report it to your mother or your parents, most of the times they wouldn't want to take the case on. For example, proceed to court or report it to the police. They would rather gather at home and make it a home issue, a home
family business.
Exactly. So you saying that from a different country, it's giving me like, when will this end? How will this end? Because if it happens in Ghana, it happens in other countries.
That's right. And that's the point. What you're describing there, sweeping it under the carpet. In fact, in my own personal story, I discovered this less than a year ago. I told my cousins the question, can you keep a secret? When they responded yes to that question, I told them I was being abused. It wasn't no tickling. I told them point blank I was being sexually abused. They told their mother immediately. Their mother told my grandmother. A family meeting took place. I can remember this like it was yesterday. My mother said to me, your aunt has said to your grandma that your stepfather's abusing you. We're going to have a family meeting. I was sat on the floor watching TV at the time. I remember it vividly. My stepfather went down the road to buy alcohol. He was an alcoholic. But being an alcoholic did not make him a pedophile. The alcohol gave him the confidence to be who he was. Now that family meeting never happened, but around a year ago, less than a year ago, I asked my mother about this, and she said, the family meeting happened with me, your grandparents, and your stepfather. And when that meeting happened, I told them it was tickling in Spain and it stopped. That's where my mother went wrong. Let the pedophile speak. Do not speak on his behalf. You are not his defender. You are not his advocate. You are not his lawyer. You are not the Holy Spirit. Let the pedophile talk. Because when I told my cousins, it was not about tickling. My family went wrong there because, number 1, I should have been in the room. Number 2, my cousins should have been in the room. That didn't happen. And as a result, I was sexually abused from the ages of 4 to 10 by my stepfather. I was a victim of attempted rape.
So sorry.
Thank you for that. And then years later, my stepfather showed me pornography with him and my mother to groom me to engage sexually with him. And a few years before that, after the abuse had stopped, air quotes, my stepfather tried to get me to put my hands down his trousers. I walked away and said no. The reality is, when you've been abused at a young age, and the grooming, the Stockholm Syndrome, and all that's involved, years later, when that person or someone asks you to engage sexually, often you don't have that courage or confidence to walk away. Thank God that I did. The point I'm making, at that family meeting, the family fell short. The police should have been there. And it's not just my mother and my family who screwed up. It happens too often, where we have a family meeting or a meeting with the pastor and the elders. Hello, bring the police there. bring the police.
There because it happens in church, it happens in the home, it happens at workplaces.
Yes.
Oh, goodness, it's exhausting.
Yes.
It's exhausting.
And when the police are not there, that perpetrator has got away with it and will continue because they were not prosecuted. They didn't get a slap on the wrist. When it happens at the church and you say, Pastor X or Y, we have heard you've abused my son or daughter, and the pastor denies it, well, what happens next? Nothing.
And
that's not just you're funny. And that's not just in the Catholic Church. I know about it happening in all churches. And you rightly said on Sunday, he'll preach again. Or in the Catholic Church, get moved to another church to preach again and abuse again. Not even a slap on the wrist. When you do that, you're saying it's okay to abuse. It's okay, Pastor, because you're the man of God. Hello. The Bible is very clear. What you do to little kids, it's better to have a noose around your neck. The Lord cares about everybody, and vengeance belongs to him. But that doesn't mean to say the police do not have a job to protect and serve. Yes, we know that vengeance is God's, but he gave us rules, he gave us wisdom, and he wants us to protect and safeguard the flock. And when you are a parent, the children are your flock. Protect them, not the pastor or the priest or the bishop or the elder. Protect your kids and get the police involved immediately.
What I don't understand is why they think somebody who is sexually harassed somebody, something that is supposed to be punitive, they think the punishment that is so huge or outrageous for them is transferring them from one place to another. Like,
it's funny, but it's not.
What the hell are you doing?
Hello.
What the hell are you doing? So this person says, a guy sexually harassed me at the waiting area and I reported to the manager in charge. He only said he likes me. I told him I didn't feel comfortable with that. He should check the kind of people who come to the office, especially those he recruits. I felt so bad afterwards. You see, in Ghana, that's one thing. If somebody sexually harasses you or somebody is, sending you text messages, insistently telling you how much they're interested in you, telling you what they're going to do with you when they're in a relationship with you, and you tell them that you are not interested, they'll be like, oh, the person is interested in you. So the person is doing whatever he or she is doing because they are interested in you. They allow the abuse to continue. Juanita, let me ask this question. What if I'm harassed today? What is the first thing I should do? What should I do?
I would say, which is what my mother always told me, make a record. Let's assume you're in a workplace.
Yeah.
Make a written record of what happened, what time, where. Keep that. That is your evidence. And then once you have done that, depending on the type of environment you're in, speak to HR. Make sure there's a confidential meeting. If nothing is done with HR, then you go up the food chain, whoever is above HR. If nothing happens, then straight to the authorities. But there is always a protocol. In other words, when you have an issue, like the Bible says, when you have an issue with your brother, go to them directly. When they don't listen, bring an elder. When they don't listen, bring the pastor. There is a protocol. But if you are in immediate danger, forget protocol. Call the police services immediately. I'm not saying, okay, you're in a situation, God forbid you were raped, and go to HR. Hello, that's a crime right now. But sometimes these offenses, they are minor in nature. And unfortunately, the police will not be able to do anything. Their hands are tied. Because the crime is fortunately, it's so small and insignificant. In my country, we will call it NFA, no further action. But it doesn't mean to say that you cannot report. Even if they NFA, it is on file. But like I said, if it happens at work, go straight away. Because there are instances when a situation occurs and HR has been informed previously where that person is shifted to another department. That person may even be terminated or fired. Depending on your employer, there are things in place that are there to protect you. It's whether the employer does the protection that is key.
In Ghana, you might not even be lucky because the person you're going to report to is the person who does worse than the person who just sexually harassed you. So
they have ammunition. They realize you are vulnerable, and then they decide to offer you into their room for this meeting and abuse you even more.
Shoulder to cry on, and you come back.
Like I said, the police, that is the first point and the last point. You follow the protocol. But if the protocol will not work, you phone the authorities. Call them immediately. like I said, in all countries we have corruption. If you are a Christian, pray for discernment, that you will discern which police officer to speak to. Because there are definitely police officers who will stand with you and for you. Not everyone is corrupt. And don't just trust someone who is female or who is male. Because you never know what kind of things they get up to. We are people. And even in the police force around the world, there are people who choose those professions to take advantage. Let's be real. You can be a teacher for the purpose of abusing kids. So don't sit there and think, oh, it's my teacher, oh, it's my elder. They will not. It's not about paranoia. It is about wisdom. The Bible says, trust no man. Trust only him upstairs, and his name is Jesus.
I like the fact that you are bringing in the Bible. You seem very religious. Now, Juanita, let's get to know you, moving a little bit away from the sexual harassment topic. Let's get to know Juanita. Who is Juanita?
Thank you. That seems like such a loaded question. I love the way you just asked me that. Who am I? Well, people always ask, and the answer is almost canned response. I'm from England. And I say that first and foremost because my accent changes. 1 minute it sounds American, next minute it sounds Jamaican, then Indian, then Filipino, then Ghanaian. I am English. I was born in England. Because people think I'm born in Jamaica. You are wrong. I was born in England. My parents are Jamaican. Traveled to 41 countries. But for the last 10 years, I've been living like a Luke chapter 10 Christian. Now, for those who don't know the scripture, Jesus said to the disciples, when you go out, do not take gold and silver and dust of your feet. So for 10 years I've traveled the world by myself, single female, looking about 12 years of age, sleeping on floors, skipping meals, living and serving the poor, the needy, doing feeding programs. I have a heart for people. I have a passion for serving. If I see someone who is poor and homeless, I will go and buy them food. I will buy them groceries. I love to serve, whether it's those in prostitution, those who are homeless. For me, money requires accountability. So unless the Holy Spirit speaks, I do not give money, because some people are begging on the street. In fact, they are trafficked. In fact, they are begging, and there's a pimp or trafficker who takes their money. But when I see a child and I see a need and I'm moved to compassion, what do? I will buy food. But more than that, I'll ask them, I'm going to KFC, what would you like? What drink would you like? Just because they're homeless doesn't mean they cannot have choice and autonomy. I have a passion for prison ministry. As I shared, I'm a survivor of sexual abuse, but regardless of that, I have a passion for helping people. I have a passion for serving. I love people. And I believe that Jesus looks at people not because of what they were, but because of who they can be. In fact, I gave a donation to the Enaswan prison on December 27th. I donated to 36 men, food, toiletries, water. In fact, I gave them so much they could not contain it. As it says in Malachi chapter 3, when you give your tithes, 10% of all you have, God will open the windows of heaven and pour out so much blessing you cannot contain it. I went there and donated so much the men could hardly carry the things. I have a renewed passion, and I want people to hear me carefully. I have a passion for men in prison, specifically those who have committed murder, rape, and pedophilia. My passion is not for the crime, my passion is for the person. When they are rehabilitated by the grace of God and come out of prison, they deserve a second chance. John 3:16 is about second chances. I don't believe in the death penalty. I believe God sees these people as human beings. He doesn't see them as murderers, rapists, and pedophiles, but as human beings. And I have a heart for these people. And one of my dreams is to open bakeries around the world, including in Ghana, if it's God's will, and hire homeless people, prostitutes, and ex-convicts. At the end of the day, if I can hire an ex-convict, he doesn't need to keep selling child pornography. He doesn't need to keep robbing people, burglarizing homes. It doesn't mean I like what you did, but you're a person who deserves a second chance in Jesus' name.
Wow, Juanita, that's a lot. No wonder you said that's packed. No wonder you said that. But is it because you were sexually abused? That's why you became an attorney? Do you defend people who've gone through such events or such activities?
It's interesting. It's almost now 8 years I've been a New York attorney, but because I'm a British citizen and I don't have a green card or a work permit, I'm a pro bono attorney.
Okay.
Now, people think that I choose to be pro bono. They tell me, why don't you get a paid job? Why do you work for free for the last 10 years? I work for free because, number one, without a work permit, it's illegal. I'm a Christian, I'm a lawyer, I'm a person of integrity. In the United States, I volunteer at Christian Legal Aid. Every year, I will go to the Christian Lawyers Conference to network, to connect. Like I said, I have a heart for people. Although I cannot work for pay, I can still serve communities. So I provide free legal advice to homeless people, immigrants, and those who have been in prison. I have a passion for people. I wish I could stand in court and wave around weapons and be theatrical like they were in the O.J. Simpson trial. But without a work permit, I cannot do that. People have recommended to me to work under the table, over the table, off the books, green card marriage. Green card marriage is fraud. So I'm not going to marry somebody for papers, which is why almost 8 years later, unpaid lawyer. But it is my dream that one day I can work for pay in the U.S. Not for money, but so I can help victims of abuse and trafficking. So I can defend those who are falsely imprisoned or given excessive sentences. I believe we all have a calling on our life. I don't know why I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer who's always on TV, but I'm not a lawyer in the courtroom. I have a license. There are people who need my help. And if I'm very honest, those people are not in Ghana because I'm not a Ghanaian lawyer. So when people ask me for advice, the answer is no with bells and whistles. I cannot advise you. I am a New York lawyer. And in New York, with supervision, I can provide advice, but I can't just pick it out of the tree. And I'm not going to do that. But my prayer is one day I can be a paid lawyer fighting for victims and survivors. One day I can have those bakeries and hire people who need a second chance.
I'll come back to that, but I've seen people sending messages. This is AFOC. He says he's attaining the fullness of Christ. Okay. He's asking, what of abuse of boys or men? There are a lot of men who are also sexually abused. I think we've spoken about it. He comes back to say the topic of kissing will usually need the culture of the people in question factored in. Okay, that's great. Ebenezer Kujo says great job, and then Small Care says great discussion. But Juanita, if you want to give people second chances, don't you think that you are going to breed criminals back into the society? Because most of the time, people who have been arrested, prosecuted, gone there, served and come back, usually still have the traits of, the crimes that they've committed. It's only a few out of 10, probably 2 or 1, who usually have changed. So if you're giving them second chances, are you not sort of not making the community safe for people?
And I appreciate you asking that. What I can say, in New York, we have a bakery in Yonkers called Greystone. Greystone make brownies. We have a very famous ice cream around the world called Ben & Jerry's. Greystone brownies are inside Ben & Jerry's ice cream. Those brownies are made from ex-convicts. That means people who were in prison. Greystone Bakery are a very successful bakery which was founded by a Buddhist monk who died 3 years ago from natural causes. He wanted to show love in action. In fact, there is a body shop somewhere in the mid-coast in the United States who also hire ex-convicts. In fact, there are even places in the UK, one is called Timson, that make keys if you need a new or replacement key, hire ex-convicts. I want people to understand, in New York specifically, which I learned about 10 years ago, once you've committed a felony conviction, you can't get food stamps, you can't get free healthcare, you can't get free housing. In my opinion, it is a system set up for the black and brown people to fail. Because when you go to courts and prisons in the US, in the courthouse they're all black and brown. In the prison, the population is primarily people who look like us, they're black and brown. And the population of black and brown is very small in comparison. The prisons there are a business. It is modern slavery in those prisons where they earn about $1 a day making tinned food, etc. Now let's be real. A person goes into prison for a crime they committed. Yes, factual. Some of them are in solitary confinement. Some of them are not. others of them are released. Now, I'm not saying you're a pedophile, round of applause. I'm saying you are a pedophile. God sees you as a human being with pedophile tendencies, because there's life and death in the tongue. He doesn't see you as a murderer. He sees you as a person with murdering tendencies, which means you have the capacity to change. When those people are released, not because of Miss Headley, when they are released because their time is up or good behavior, I do not think that they deserve to sit outside of that prison without a job, without an income. Because when they have no means of an income, they will keep committing crimes. For me, it's common sense. Even in the Bible, we had an alcoholic, we had an adulterer. His name was David. The fact is, Jesus still loved him. He didn't see him as an adulterer and a murderer. He saw him as a person after his own heart. We can sit and judge, but judging will not stop criminals from committing crime. And as I mentioned in the body shop, when they started to hire ex-convicts over in the Mid-Coast, the staff turnover dropped by 60%. When you give an ex-convict a second chance, when you believe in him or her, give him a way to make an honest living, 95% of them are going to work hard. Maybe they'll fall short and get fired, but you're giving them a chance. And that's not a statistic. I'm just throwing it out there. They work hard. Greystone Bakery are a business. They will fire you. They don't joke. But they will support you. Housing, healthcare, financial, mental health.
Necessities.
Yes. And if we all got that, we would not quit jobs. If I was supported in my job, I would not have had to quit 2 years ago to do ministry in Trinidad on human trafficking. But when my employer refused to give me 2 weeks vacation time I'm entitled to go to Trinidad like I've done for 5 years, I quit my job. If my boss was for me and not against me, she would say, Juanita works with women who have been prostituted in England. She wants to work with victims in Trinidad. She's done it for 5 years. I would support her. She did not. I quit my job. I shouldn't have to do that. If I have children, I shouldn't have to quit my job. If I have alcohol problems, I shouldn't have to quit my job. But Greystone meet the needs of their employees, and we should do the same.
Okay, so now let's talk about your book, because you mentioned that to your cousins, and it turns out you are now writing a book about it. Your book is entitled Can You Keep a Secret? What is the story of the book?
Most certainly. My book, Can You Keep a Secret, which is available on Amazon. And in fact, I'm really excited to share my book was launched at Powerhouse in Ghana. I believe it was June 1, 2019. So it was first printed here, launched here. And the title comes out of my story. What I always try to explain in every interview, time permitting. When someone asks you the question, can you keep a secret? Do not say no. Do not say it depends. In fact, I know of a child aged 7 who came to school and said, Daddy is licking my cookie. That was her private parts. Now, if she came up to you and said, can you keep a secret? When you say no or it depends, she will not tell you. However, if she comes up to you and says, can you keep a secret? When you say yes, she will say, Daddy is licking my cookie. Then you will say, I have to break your trust and phone the police. I'll explain it again. Can you keep a secret? Yes. Then she would say, Daddy is licking my cookie. Then you would say, I have to break your trust and phone the police. Do not phone the accused. I heard you've been sexually abusing your daughter. He's going to deny it and hide the evidence.
Doing it,
Exactly. And as we just discussed, when we discuss these issues with family, pastor, whoever, your daughter, your son has claimed this and the other about me or my husband, it's swept under the carpet. It's a cry for help. But let me be clear, when you're at work, teacher, therapist, counselor, when your profession tells you, when a child asks you, can you keep a secret, you need to say it depends, follow the law. My mother is a teacher. My mother knows I was abused. My mother's heard my interviews. Sadly, in 6 years of giving interviews, if you ask my mother, Mrs. X, can you keep a secret? She will say it depends. And that breaks my heart because she didn't learn from Juanita. She didn't learn from 6 years of interviews. She is so hard-headed. She hasn't learned. The answer is yes. When she's in school, I agree with my mother. Outside of school, you say yes to the person so they can open up to you about their secret. Once you've heard it, communicate first of all. Let's say, can you keep a secret? Yes. Daddy's licking my cookie. You don't phone the police. That is wrong. Can you keep a secret? Yes. Daddy is licking my cookie. Then you tell the child first, I'm going to call the police, and then you do it. There is a protocol. It is not a trust issue thing because you told the child first. And that is so important. People need to get my book to understand the message of can you keep a secret, to know how to safeguard and protect the children in their world, to understand human trafficking. And the best part about the book, every chapter has scriptures. In fact, the last chapter is on salvation. I'm not a light under a lampstand. I'm a city on a hill that cannot be hidden. People need to read my book to be educated, empowered, and inspired. It is life-changing, literally.
Okay, Juanita, you have just 1 minute to wrap up. Our time is up, so that's your camera. Tell the youth who are watching you this afternoon something, because we are on Youth Empowerment. We have to empower the youth.
Absolutely. Well, again, I'm going to have to promote my book. You need to get a copy of my book. I'm here in Ghana, not for very long. However, if you would like me to share my message on education, empowerment, human trafficking, child abuse prevention, you can reach out to me. My Facebook is Changing Cases, Changing, CASES. My WhatsApp number is +63 93 939 09148. That's +63 93 939 09148. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Changing Cases. You can Google me, Juanita Headley. Don't believe everything you read about me. I was falsely imprisoned 2 years ago. Don't believe everything you read, guys. Again, Changing Cases, Changing, CASES. And then finally, because people always ask questions, this is a purity ring. A purity ring is what you wear on your wedding finger until you meet your future husband or wife. It does not keep you sexually pure, because someone said it keeps you pure. No, it doesn't. The Holy Spirit and the Lord does. But a purity ring is a commitment to your future husband or future wife. So I want to make that clear. It's a ring that shows I'm keeping myself until I get married to my husband, not a wife, right? ChangingCases.org. Can you keep a secret? I can keep a secret. What about you?
Thank you so much, Juanita. Your presence exudes, it's so welcoming, and I believe if I have a secret, I'll definitely tell.
Please do.
Unfortunately, I don't have secrets. Please, I journal everything, so I have all my secrets in my book. So for the purposes of education, let me tell our viewers that our Ghanaian laws frown upon sexual harassment. Our Labor Act 2003, Act 651, Section 175 defines sexual harassment. And then it talks about how you can go about it. And our Criminal Act, Act 29, also frowns against sexual harassment and any sexual assault, rape, and unknown carnal knowledge, and all of those things. So if somebody is giving you hugs at work, is eyeing you in a way that you're uncomfortable with, please go to the police and they'll take care of you. Okay, take care of yourself and be so good to yourself. I hope something good happens to you. Today is the last day of January. I hope something good happens to you as we are entering the month of love. I'll be here tomorrow. Take care. Bye bye.